There is a wound that lies beneath almost every other wound, a quiet, persistent ache in the soul that whispers a single, devastating lie. You are not good enough. It's the voice that discounts every compliment you receive, the feeling that you must constantly prove your worth through your achievements, the secret fear that if people saw the real, flawed you, they would turn away in disappointment. This feeling of unworthiness is not a mood, it is a lens, a distorted filter through which you see yourself and the world. It colors every interaction, taints every success, and quietly sabotages your capacity for joy and love. You may have spent years trying to fix this feeling, trying to achieve your way out of it, trying to be perfect enough, successful enough, or selfless enough to finally feel worthy. But it never works, because you have been trying to solve the wrong problem. The great psychoanalyst Carl Jung understood that this feeling of unworthiness is not the truth of who you are. It is not a fact to be overcome. It is a story you learned a long, long time ago. It is a shadow belief, a core lie about yourself that was so painful it was cast into the unconscious. And from there, it has been secretly running the show, dictating your choices, and limiting your life. The journey of shadow work is not about trying to prove this story wrong. It is about learning to see that it was never true in the first place. Today, we will not try to build a new sense of worthiness. We will excavate. We will go back to the source of the wound, and we will uncover the indestructible, non-negotiable truth of your value. A truth that has been waiting patiently beneath all the stories for you to finally come home to it.
To excavate the source of this wound, we must travel back in time, back to the tender, formative years of our childhood, where our sense of self was first being molded. No child is born feeling unworthy. A baby does not question its right to be fed, to be held, to be loved. This sense of inherent worthiness is our factory setting. It is the natural state of the soul. So where does it go? How does this pristine sense of value get corrupted? It happens through 1,000 tiny cuts, through the subtle and often unintentional messages we receive from the world around us, primarily from our caregivers. The great wound of unworthiness is almost always born in the soil of conditional love. Conditional love is the environment where affection, approval, and attention are not given freely, but must be earned. They're rewards for good behavior. Let's imagine a little girl named Sarah. When Sarah is quiet, gets good grades, and helps with the chores, her parents praise her. "You're such a good girl. Mommy is so proud of you." In these moments, she feels seen, loved, and worthy. But when Sarah is messy, loud, or expresses a difficult emotion like anger or sadness, the approval is withdrawn. She might be ignored. She might be scolded. "Don't be a crybaby. Go to your room until you can be pleasant." The child's mind is not sophisticated. It cannot think, "My parents are stressed and don't have the tools to handle my emotions." The child's mind thinks, "There is something wrong with me." It makes a simple, devastating calculation. The good parts of me are lovable. The bad, messy, needy parts of me are unlovable. This is the moment the great split occurs, the moment the shadow is born. In order to survive, in order to maintain the precious bond with her caregivers, the child learns to amputate parts of her own soul. Her anger, her sadness, her wildness, her right to have needs. All of these authentic parts are deemed unworthy. They're a threat to her survival. So she pushes them down into the darkness of the unconscious. This is the very beginning of a lifetime of shadow work, even if we don't know it. And she begins to build her persona, her mask around only the acceptable parts. She becomes the good girl, the helper, the peacemaker. Her sense of worth is now completely externalized. It is no longer an intrinsic state of being. It is something she must constantly perform, constantly earn, constantly prove. The exhausting treadmill of proving my worth has begun. This dynamic is not always so overt. Sometimes the wound of unworthiness comes from a more subtle form of neglect. Imagine a boy named Mark who grew up in a home where his parents were not unkind, but were emotionally absent. They were busy, stressed, perhaps dealing with their own unresolved trauma. When Mark tried to show him his drawings or tell him about his day, they would be distracted. "That's nice, honey." "Uh-huh." In these moments, the child receives not the message, "I am bad." The message is even more painful. It is, "I am invisible. I don't matter." His authentic expressions, his joys, his bids for connection are met with a void. And so he learns that who he truly is not important enough to be seen. He develops a core shadow belief that he is fundamentally insignificant. To compensate, he may spend his adult life becoming a high achiever, relentlessly seeking the attention and validation he never received, but never truly feeling fulfilled because the core wound of "I don't matter" is still running the show. These are just two examples. This wound can come from being compared to a sibling, from being bullied at school, from growing up in a culture that values you only for your looks or your achievements. The source may be different, but the core lie is always the same. Who I am, in my natural, authentic state, is not enough to be loved. This lie is what Carl Jung would call a complex. It is a cluster of emotionally charged thoughts, memories, and beliefs in the unconscious that operates like a splinter in the psyche. It has its own energy. It has its own voice. It is the voice of your inner critic. That voice that tells you you're a fraud after a big success. That is the unworthiness complex trying to keep you safe by keeping you small, just like it learned to do in childhood. That feeling of panic when someone gets too close, the fear that they will find you out. That is the complex, terrified that your unlovable shadow parts will be exposed. That inability to accept a compliment, the way you immediately deflect it or minimize it, that is the complex because your core programming says, "I am not worthy of this praise." So the first step in healing is not to fight this belief, it is to understand it. It is to approach that wounded inner child with compassion and to finally see the lie for what it is. Not a truth, but a scar. A beautiful, tragic scar from a battle you fought long ago just to survive.
A scar. And the beautiful thing about a scar is that it is not the wound itself. It is the evidence that healing has occurred. It is a sign of resilience. To see the lie of unworthiness as a scar is the first step. The next step is to uncover the healthy, whole skin that has been there underneath all along. This is where the work of Carl Jung becomes not just a psychological map, but a deeply spiritual one. Because he gave us a name and a concept for the indestructible truth of who we are. He called it the self with a capital S. The self is not your personality. It is not your ego. It is not your collection of achievements or failures or relationships. The self, in the Jungian model, is the divine organizing center of the entire psyche. It is the wholeness to which we belong, the source from which we came, and the destination to which our entire life's journey is trying to return us. It is the sun. Your personality, your ego, your moods, your feelings of worthiness or unworthiness, these are just the clouds. The clouds are constantly changing. They can be dark and stormy or light and fluffy. They can completely obscure the sun for days on end.
But no matter how dark the clouds get, they never, ever damage the sun. The sun is always there, whole, radiant, unchanging. Your intrinsic worth is the sun. Your feeling of unworthiness is just a cloud. This is the fundamental truth that can set you free. Your worth is not something you build. It is not something you achieve. It is not something you earn. It is something you are. It is the very essence of your being. It is non-negotiable. Let's make an important distinction here because our culture constantly confuses two very different things: self-esteem and self-worth. Self-esteem is conditional. It is based on what you do. It is connected to your ego. You have high self-esteem when you get the promotion, when you run the marathon, when you receive a compliment. It is external. It is fluctuating. It is a necessary part of navigating the world, but it is not the foundation of your being. It is the weather. Self-worth, on the other hand, is unconditional. It is based on who you are. It is connected to the self. It is the deep, quiet, unshakable knowing that you have a right to exist, to take up space, to have needs, and to be loved, simply because you were here. It is not dependent on your achievements, your looks, your wealth, or the approval of others. It is the ground beneath your feet. The core of the unworthiness wound is that we have been taught to build our entire house on the shifting weather of self-esteem. And so we live in a constant state of anxiety, constantly checking the forecast, terrified that the next storm will level us. The journey of shadow work and healing is the process of relocating your foundation. It is the work of digging down through the mud of your conditional beliefs until you hit the bedrock of your unconditional self-worth. This is what self-love truly means. It has been co-opted by our culture to mean bubble baths and positive affirmations. And while those things can be nice, true self-love is a much fiercer, more courageous act. True self-love is the act of radical self-acceptance. It is the willingness to look at all the parts of yourself, especially the parts you have exiled to your shadow, and to say, you belong too. It is looking at your messy, unlovable parts, your anger, your jealousy, your fear, your neediness, and instead of trying to fix them or get rid of them, you learn to hold them with compassion. Because Carl Jung understood a profound secret. The shadow is not just where our demons lie, it is also where our greatest strengths are hidden. The anger you exiled to your shadow, it is also the source of your passion and your boundaries. The fear you disowned, it is also the source of your wisdom and your prudence. The sadness you were taught to suppress, it is also the source of your empathy and your connection to the human heart. Wholeness does not come from amputating these parts, it comes from integrating them. And the paradox is this: the more you are willing to embrace and accept your unworthy parts, the more you begin to experience your own unshakable worthiness. Because you are no longer trying to earn love by being a fragmented, perfect version of yourself. You are learning to give love to the totality of who you are. You are moving from a conditional relationship with yourself to an unconditional one. You are beginning to treat yourself the way the sun treats the clouds. You are acknowledging their presence, their storms, their darkness, while never forgetting the constant, radiant, and indestructible light that is always, always shining at the center of your being. This is your inner truth. This is the self. This is the gold standard that was never and can never be taken from you.
The indestructible light that is always shining. This is the inner truth. But how do we begin to feel it?
How do we move from knowing this intellectually to embodying it as a lived reality, especially when the voice of the inner critic is so loud and convincing? The healing of the unworthiness wound is a gentle, patient process. It is the work of slowly, consistently challenging the old lie with new evidence. It is about becoming a compassionate detective of your own goodness. So, I want to offer you a practical, powerful piece of shadow work you can start today. A way to begin gathering the evidence that will prove the inner critic wrong. Let's call this practice collecting the gold. For the next week, I want you to get a small notebook or create a new note on your phone. This will be your book of gold. Every single day, your only task is to find one small, concrete piece of evidence of your own inherent goodness and worth. Just one. Now, here is the crucial rule. This piece of evidence cannot be an achievement. It cannot be about your productivity, your success, or someone else's praise. The evidence must come from the quiet, often overlooked moments of your character in action. Let me give you some examples of what gold might look like. Maybe your piece of gold is, I listened patiently to a coworker today, even though I was busy. Maybe it's, I noticed a beautiful flower on my walk and took a moment to appreciate it. Or, I felt a surge of anger, and instead of suppressing it or lashing out, I just allowed myself to feel it. That was an act of honesty. Or perhaps, I was kind to the cashier at the grocery store. I took a deep breath instead of yelling. I watered my plants. Do you see? We are not looking for grand, heroic acts. We are looking for the small, quiet, decent moments that your inner critic conveniently ignores. We are looking for the evidence of the self, of your soul, moving through your daily life. The voice of unworthiness is a master of generalization. It takes one mistake and says, see, you are a failure. Our job with this practice is to become masters of specificity. We are fighting the general lie with specific, undeniable truths. At first, this practice may feel incredibly difficult. The inner critic will try to sabotage it. It will say, that doesn't count, that was too small, or anyone would have done that, it's not special. Your job is to treat that voice like a heckler in the back of a concert hall. You acknowledge its presence, and then you gently turn your attention back to the music. You write down your piece of gold anyway. This is a profound act of shadow integration. The shadow belief of unworthiness has been running your life from the dark. By consciously writing down a piece of evidence to the contrary, you are bringing a small piece of light into that darkness. You are literally rewiring your brain. You are building a new neural pathway, the pathway of self-worth. Each entry in your book of gold is a stone you are laying on this new path. After a week of doing this, I want you to sit down and read your 7 entries out loud to yourself. Read them slowly. Let them land. You may be surprised at what you feel. You may feel a softening, a warmth, a small quiet flicker of a new feeling. That feeling is the beginning of a new story, a truer story. This is not a quick fix. It is a lifelong practice. It is the practice of learning to see yourself through a new lens, not the distorted, critical lens of the wounded child, but the clear, compassionate, and loving lens of the self. Carl Jung taught that the goal of shadow work is to make the unconscious conscious. And the most deeply unconscious belief for so many of us is the lie of our own unworthiness. By collecting the gold, you are making that unconscious process conscious. You are actively participating in your own healing.
You are no longer a passive victim of your old programming. You are becoming the co-creator of a new, more loving inner world. You are learning, one small piece of gold at a time, that your worth is not a question to be answered. It is a truth to be remembered. And you are finally starting to remember.
And so you begin to remember. You are not a project to be fixed. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a truth to be discovered. We began this journey feeling the deep, persistent ache of unworthiness, believing the lie that our value was something we had to earn. We traveled back to the source of this wound, understanding that it was not a reflection of our true nature, but a scar left over from a childhood strategy of survival. We then uncovered the profound truth that Carl Jung offered us, the distinction between the fluctuating weather of self-esteem and the solid ground of unconditional self-worth. We learned that at our core, we are not a collection of flaws, but a radiant, indestructible self. And finally, we were given a gentle, tangible practice, collecting the gold, to begin the sacred work of gathering evidence for this truth. This is the heart of shadow work, consciously bringing the light of awareness to the shadow belief of unworthiness. This journey is not about becoming arrogant or narcissistic. It is about arriving at a place of quiet, grounded self-acceptance. It is about finally giving yourself the unconditional love you may have always been seeking from the outside world. As you continue this practice, as you start to truly own your inherent worth, you may notice a new and very surprising feeling begin to emerge. Beneath the layers of not good enough, you may start to feel a flicker of something else, something powerful, a strength you didn't know you had, a clarity you haven't experienced before, a raw, authentic life force. This is the gold you have been collecting. This is the energy of your integrated shadow. This is the power of your true self beginning to shine through. And this can be terrifying. We are so used to feeling small and unworthy that feeling our own power can be deeply unsettling. We can become afraid of our own light, afraid of what we might do with it, afraid of how the world will react to it. Why are we so afraid of our own power, and how can we learn to wield it with wisdom and grace? This is the next great adventure on our path of shadow work. It is the journey from worthiness to empowerment, and it is exactly what we will be exploring in our next video. I invite you to subscribe so that we may continue to walk this path together. For now, your work is to become a collector of your own gold. I invite you to share in the comments below, not your grandest achievement, but just one small, quiet piece of gold you found in yourself this week. One moment of kindness, one act of courage, one flicker of truth. Let this space become a collective treasure chest where we can witness and celebrate the inherent worth in one another. Remember, you are not here to prove your worthiness. You are here to express it, and it has been waiting your entire life for you to finally see it.